or loving our neighbors and buying local. Localism is a quaint theory, and I'm pushing it to the max. Seeing it does have some faults. It does make some mistakes, and but nonetheless, it is quaint and cheerful and very provincial. And I'm trying to become less a cosmopolite and more of a localist, and maybe an agrarian if I can get there. We argue that near is better than far, small than big, simple than complex. And down in the footnotes, which are at 5-point type Helvetica, the neutral font, we argue that personal is better than corporate and physical than abstract. We're brought to you by yournews.com. Yournews.com. Go to the local page and read my latest about a roadblock which is so badly run this coming Friday. It probably won't be illegal, and if you're caught in it, you probably won't have cause to have the case dismissed. But it is clearly indicative of a kind of lawless attitude by the good people, right? The good people in Nashville, and even the good people here in enforcing laws and statutes in Hamilton County and Chattanooga. I'm a homeschool dad. I have 4 children from 15 to 26. They are all through the 3 eldest out of the house. The last one, 15, still at home getting his lessons with his mother and some from me, but a lot done independently. As we're finding out that homeschool son or daughter tends to be very independent, not needing to be told what to think, what page to open, when and where, but get your work done and have time and liberty to do other things. We have here in the studio 2 of our notable graduates from homeschooling. One will be graduating in April, but they're being honored by the local homeschool association and received some state recognition last week in Nashville. Andrew James-Catalano is 18. He is the son of a systems engineer at Blue Cross, and his mom, Cynthia, his dad's Jack James-Catalano, and his mother, Cynthia. She is a homeschool mom and also a yearbook advisor for the Homeschool Association and an avid volunteer. And there are 2 other children in that family. And the Plotners, Gage Plotner, 17. His dad is a regular at Panera Posse, which is every Friday morning, by the way, at the Hickson Panera Bread store. I'm there. I'm always invited, so I always attend and have my usual, which is a very well-toasted blueberry bagel with 3 butters and a coffee. And Gage has been coming occasionally, though he has a work commitment right now. So Gage Plotner, you're 17 years old. Can you give an excuse as to why you've not shown up to hear the wise men talk, as it were, at Panera Posse on Friday mornings?
Well, I got to be at work at 8, and it's hard to make that transition from being at Panera to all the way downtown.
What's a regular workday like?
Well, right now my work schedule is only on Fridays from 8 to 3 or 8 to 4, depending on who can come in and who can make it when. But
what kind of business is it that you work in?
I work at the downtown YMCA as a lifeguard.
Well, Andrew, what is your what kind of work are you doing now that you're near the point of graduating with a diploma from home education?
Yeah, well, mostly right now I do free work, so mostly it's volunteer labor in that sense. But do a lot of stuff at my church. I create the slideshow, the bulletin. Then I run those 2 things. I print them out on Sunday morning. So it's a lot of work over at my church. Which benefits me because I like those things. It's an avenue that I want to explore more. Otherwise, I do volunteer work at a library, do kind of stuff like that. I've built a 3D printer for them. So it's a lot of technical things for different businesses that don't otherwise have people who know what they're doing in the technical field.
You say you built a printer. Explain what you mean by that?
Well, a 3D printer, which is a printer that prints in 3D. And the library got the funding to buy a 3D printer, but they didn't have the idea of which one they wanted to buy, or even when they did buy it, how to build it or use it. So I told them which one to buy, then built it for them, and then showed them how to use it. So now that the library can provide 3D printing.
And how is it being used?
It's being used for programs. They actually do an educational programming on 3D printers. Show how to print things, what 3D is, and then all the kids in the program can print their own things. So it's used for educational programming.
Well, what other things are in your future, Andrew?
Coming up in the fall, this fall, I'm going over to the Chattanooga State Community College TCAT, which is the College of Applied Technology there, where I'll do the computer science class there. And that's like, the internals of a computer, learning how to build. And then that will kind of snowball into being able to start my own business if I desired, have a job, stable job doing computer support, and also know what I'm doing there in that field.
Well, you tell my listener about what you already can do now. You have, it seems, a platform or a series of gifts and experiences that you've had that would allow you already to support someone in business. Let's say, what could you do now at 18, a homeschool graduate? Now, what do you have that's already marketable and maybe to all the parts together in a package,
right?
Like a little business,
right? Well, proficiency in Microsoft Office, which is Word, Excel, stuff like that. So I can use that very effectively. I know my way around both operating systems of Windows 7, Windows 10, so common operating systems. I know how to use that, and also I'm learning, not proficient, but learning how to build the computer from scratch. So learn to build the computer, then I know how to use Office. I can create stuff in Photoshop and any other software. So I'm also able to create graphics.
So all these are parts of a potential business. What would that business look like?
That business would probably be a combination of a web developer, a freelance web developer who can create a website for someone, and then also creating graphic design, so creating graphics for people.
Well, Gage Plotner, you're 17. You live in Hickson with your family. Your parents are Becky and Kevin. Your mom, Becky, runs a website. It's all about using food and taking advantage of what's in food and I think supplements to improve health. So you have a kind of a health interested set of parents. What are your plans, Gage?
Well, my plans are very different from either of my parents because my mom is into health and all of that, and she does use food to heal your body.
Does the fact that the Inspector General did find that he lacked candor in some of his responses and that his firing was recommended by career FBI officials, does that give you pause, and does it suggest that in fact his firing was or may be justified?
His firing may be justified. There's no way for us to know at this point. But even though it may have been justified, it can also be tainted.
My left hand does not know what my right hand is doing, and I'm
Eric.
Hang on,
Eric. So that's a little bit of a glitch there on our internet connection, but that's Andrew or Adam.
Mike Gallagher and I are fighting over the button, and Mike, get your hands back, down, boy. Now, this is David Tulis. I'm your host here, and when I'm not here, Mike Gallagher fills my shoes. He does a great job doing it. And back, Mike, back. And he keeps asserting himself, thinking that he's going to control our microphone. But we're not going to let that happen because you and I want to hear from Gage Plotner, who's 17 years old, and he was just telling us, Becky, his mom, is very health oriented, very savvy reader and student, and has stewarded the family plate very carefully over the years. Now, Gage, tell a little bit further your plans and aspirations.
Well, as I was saying earlier, that my plans are very different from either of my parents. I intend to go into the engineering field. I'm going to start out as a mechanical engineer and then move into using that degree at hopefully TVA to be able to earn enough money to pay for a plane and then a pilot's license and then become a pilot, because that's one of my all-time goals because I enjoy it so much. I've done it a few times through my opportunities through the Civil Air Patrol. After that, I would love to become, and this would be way down the road, an astrophysicist with an aerospace engineering degree on the side. And the reason I'd be doing it in this order and way down the road is so that I can avoid going to debt throughout all of my degrees and many aspirations so that I can be free and do it.
Well, talk about a little bit about the debt threat, the debt bomb that's hanging over the heads of thousands of Americans, including many students here in Chattanooga who they'll be entering retirement ages with the threat of withholding on their Social Security because of non-paid student loan debt. What about you? Talk about that.
Well, you see, I took a financial aid class. Well, not financial aid, but a financial class. Dave Ramsey, some of you may have heard of him, class this last year. And the videos and the courses we took from him taught us a whole lot about how debt and money works in a bigger scheme than what we're kind of taught. Here in America, we are the most advertised to and marketed to country in the world. And, well, that leads to a whole lot of people seeing things that they can grab or buy. And we have a whole system that allows you to use credit cards and mortgages and all that to pay for things that you really can't afford, therefore getting yourself into debt. And once you start getting into debt, it's kind of hard to get yourself out because you keep wanting more things. And at that point, you kind of have to end up stop buying things. And, well, it's just a whole lot of not good.
Well, how would you propose to get to a doctorate degree without these kinds of obligations?
Well, that's why I'm spacing it out, so I can get the cheapest degree I can find that's still within my field, a master's in mechanical engineering, and then use that to earn enough money to get a pilot's license, which is pretty expensive, and then a plane, or slowly just work my way up in some sort of aircraft company or just giving pilots lessons and all that. And after I get enough money from that, then I would like to move on to being an aerospace engineer and astrophysicist, which...
So that implies when you're in your mid-30s, you'll stop all your work and the life that you'll be leading then, with which would be wife and children probably, and maybe a house, and say, okay, now I'm going to work on an astrophysics doctorate, which would be a 2 to 3 or 4 year program.
Well, I don't intend to stop what I'm doing and just go for this degree. So I'd turn what would be a 4 or 6 year program into a little bit more than maybe about a 10-year program, so that I can keep doing the other things, so I still have a steady source of income while I'm going on at this. But I do intend to keep it more of a side job, because it's a little bit less stable right now, because so many people are going into, at least I found, aerospace engineering. But I do enjoy studying the sciences and how physics work, and building rockets would be one of my end goals, and that's the quickest way I can see to get there. So
this is David Tulis. We're talking with two outstanding homeschool graduates here in Chattanooga, Gage Plotner, 17, and a colleague here, Andrew James-Catalano, 18. And you are home-educated sons of Christian families. Tell my listener a little bit about how it's been as a homeschooler. The question I think the listener has been trained to ask, though it's 20 years out of date and very moldy, is what about socialization? What about getting to know other people? And somehow they think that if you're homeschooled, that you are in this cramped kitchen with old-fashioned encyclopedias along one wall, and some old books, old religious books. Explain maybe what can you say to dispel the myth that underlies that popular question?
Well, there's so many programs now that we have for different homeschoolers. We have a play program, we have a yearbook program, we have all kinds of things that you would even find in a public school. And you go places. Sometimes somebody's house is used as that place, but you have 10 to 15 people coming there and socializing. There's also social dances. There's a mock trial. So every kind of program that you can think of, sports teams, all kinds of things that public school has, we have the equivalent in homeschooling. And what that equates to is over 100,000 students who are in combination going to these different programs, and you're never going to be lacking in a social life because there's so many people in all of these programs that you will go to. Actually, Gage does mock trial, and I think you just got done with the trial, right?
Yeah, mock trial just finished up, and that was a good experience.
What was the trial about, Gage?
Well, just so listeners know, because I've met a lot of people that don't know what mock trial is in the first place. Mock trial is a high school and college age group of people all throughout the United States. There's thousands of people in it that put on a court case. We have actors as the witnesses, and some of us prepare to be attorneys, preparing opening statements, arguments to close, and how to argue objections, and it's a whole lot of fun. The trial this year was about a misconception about an incident that happened at a public park. Somebody got injured during a protest, and they blamed it on the city. But the city legally had no idea that the people were going to be meeting there. But as far as non-legal matters go, you could have reasonably concluded that there would be a group there. So there was a whole lot of fun arguing on both parts for the plaintiff and the defense.
What was the protest about in the mock trial universe that you played out?
The protest was in a city called Hockeytown. And at the Center Park, there was a statue of Michael Jordan. So a bunch of hockey fans called the Catfish Group, Catfish Group, I'm sorry, decided that, hey, let's get this statue down and put up one of a hockey player, just because we are in Hockey Town and there are more hockey fans here than there are basketball fans. So they decided to have a protest at the statue to, well, yes.
And so what was the legal question that made the facts sort of hard to nail down?
Well, the legal question is, what is the city responsible for? Because you had to file an application for, or even in real life, as far as I understand, you have to file an application to have a large group of people meeting somewhere. So the Catfish Group they filed for an application to have a protest, but they said it'd be on the other side of town. And the city would not have been required to provide any security or any resources at all unless there was more than 200 people at that group. And on the flyer and the legal documents, the Catfish Group said there'd only be 200 people there. So the city was not required to respond to anything.
So what role did you play, and did your team in the finals win? And did your team go to compete against McCallie, Baylor, or others elsewhere outside Tennessee?
We did not end up competing outside of Tennessee. State championships haven't even started, but we didn't make it to state championships. My personal role was I was an attorney for the defense, as well as I was an expert witness for the plaintiff, meaning that basically it was my job to know some of the rules about what was happening and provide an opinion about, like, saying, hey, this is how this thing usually works. Whereas usually we have witnesses that would be just their opinions of what happened while they were there. Well, not opinions, but their viewpoint of what happened while they were there. But we did not make it to state or nationals this year. The homeschool part of Tennessee, or CSTIA, has 4 homeschool teams, or had 4 homeschool teams that competed in the regional championships, and 3 of us did not make it. However, my team was in 5th place, but only 1st through 4th place make it to go to state. They compete against each other and one last regional round, and only the 2 winning teams out of that make it to state.
Let me ask you, homeschool graduates and outstanding young men here in the Chattanooga area, Gage Plotner, whom you were just hearing now, and Andrew James-Catalano, how is it that homeschooling frees your mind to see things in a way that young men and women who are trained in school can't? Is there some advantage of mind or even spirit that you would identify in your own in between your own ears that you see as an advantage and that you can capitalize on in the coming decades?
Definitely. So one of the biggest things for me is exploring interests that you wouldn't find in public schools. So most public schools don't have anything for graphic design or for learning Photoshop and Office just built into the curriculum. But since I had that interest and my dad had the means, I was able to incorporate those things into my schoolwork. And so everything that I was doing revolved around something that was my interest. So it wasn't just you have to do math, science, history. It was my own twist on it. And it developed into now my own kind of career. So it definitely has benefited me in that way.
And if you had been in a school, Andrew, do you think that you would have had the same possibilities? You would just have started later, say, learning these software suites?
In the sense of that I could have had that opportunity maybe later, yes. However, it wouldn't have been all of my life having exposure to the things that I have. So it's better that the way I've done it.
What about you, Gage?
Well, I'd say being homeschooled opens up a whole world of new possibilities in what you can do, because like Andrew was saying, and very much like Andrew was saying, like, you can learn what you want. Because when us homeschoolers, we have to apply all our credits and all that towards an umbrella school who will say, yes, this person has done all of everything they need to do and will let us graduate by giving us a diploma. But it doesn't matter, like, if you have a history credit, it doesn't matter if it's American, European, world, or anything like that. So you could just, like in Andrew's case, I guess, just push it towards computer history and how computers came to be, and that could be your entire history credit. Or for my case, you could do the history of aircraft and rocketry and all that stuff.
Well, how did you feel your history requirement under the state compulsory attendance statute, Gage? Did you read some Paul Johnson books?
No, we did read plenty of history books, and even later I ended up filling all my history credits that I needed to take. I finished them all off at Chat State by dual enrolling a American history class there.
So homeschoolers are, I would tell my listener, in great demand. Chat State has had for some years a dual enrollment program where young men such as Gage Plotner and Andrew James-Catalano can enroll as high schoolers, and they get credit for high school, but also that credit would apply for an associate's degree.
Yes, it would.
It's very nice.
What about disadvantages being educated and trained in the free market homeschool sector, young gentlemen? What do you say about the doubts about it?
I'm not too sure of many disadvantages. No. Some of them have arisen to me specifically, but that's because of my the way I was raised because I grew up in Miami and didn't have many friends down there. We didn't have enough money to go to all the fancy places that people went or join any of the co-ops because they all required money to be in. And so I was just schooled at home. So I moved up here to Chattanooga where our family was making enough money and we could afford to actually do some extracurricular things. And I hadn't learned much about most U.S. pop culture.
And actually, the only disadvantage I could even think of is actually just the doubts that the outside world has of homeschoolers. Not that we actually have any problems, but that when someone will see that they were only home educated at home with their mom, it almost puts a doubt in their head when, in fact, when you actually look at the statistics, homeschoolers have done better, just generally outperforming public school people in college, writing better essays, better attendance, just everything.
Well, I would say as a homeschool dad of 4 children that there's probably altogether too much socialization going on among homeschool young people. Well, this is David Tulis, and we're talking with 2 graduates. They were honored last week in Nashville as the local homeschool association had a chapter. Many of its adherents and subscribers went to Nashville to talk about the success of this free market venture, this free market adventure in educational services provided by parents, and more so provided by the students themselves who desire to learn. As we're hearing from Andrew, he wanted to learn design and art creative software, and he has done that. And now he's presenting himself as having a suite of gifts and training that would make him hireable by a business, or maybe he could start his own business. We do argue for local economy and the free market here on the David Tulis Show at Nooga Radio. We're live on Facebook, also live on YouTube. It's Nooga Radio 92.7 and 95.3 FM HD4. That's the high definition digital channel. And my show, The David Tulis Show, is brought to you by yournews.com, yournews.com. Also, our great stalwart, Nooganomics, Gage Plotner, thanks for joining us. And Andrew James-Catalano, thank you.
Thank you.
David Tulis, I've got more in the way of the marketplace. We're going to hear about an abuse of the law next. A man hanged from a bridge, though the judges were on his side. The people were filled with racial hatred. And a photograph has been found of this man, David Tulis. I've got some important messages, just important messages. Stay tuned. I'll be right back.
Traffic, news, and information. Nooga Radio, digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM.